Wait a minute. Now it's live. Good morning. Hello. How are we? I'm holding up a sleeve. Um, this is called a book sleeve, and it's made of cardboard, and it's covered in Air Force blue linen. And I'm going to tell you all about this in a minute. I just have to, do the other screen. How are you? Is everybody good? All right, hang on a second. Ah, there we are. Click, click. Hit it with a bat. There we go. Pull that out. Alrighty then. Ta-da! So I wanted to talk about two things today. The first one is you, of course, and the second one is stuff. So to get off on the best foot forward, how are you? How is every little thing? How is every large thing? How are all the in-between things? So many of you are watching now that it's blowing me away. And it's not, I'm not having millions. I'm having 100 and something. And the thing is amazing because I'm recording these videos in the middle of the morning, and throughout the day, you're stopping in. And you're either using Facebook, or you're using LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube. However it's working for you, you're looking at your watch or the clock on the wall or your phone, and you're saying, oh, Abby's on. And you're grabbing a beverage or a snack, and you're sitting down and kicking back to see what I have to say. And that's incredible. I mean, if it's in person, I can I can nudge you into meeting me. But this is all on you. This is your decision. Choosing it is just incredible. And I'm so pleased. I'm so grateful that you're here. Because, good morning, Charles. Because if I'm here and you're here, then we're here. And really, that's what this whole thing is about. Being here. So, the other day, in my memory things popping up on social media, this came up. Jack Mackenzie's Wanderlust. And I thought, oh yeah. And then it came up again this morning. And I realized that today was the day, June 21st, 2014, was the day I delivered these books to Jack. Jack was an extraordinary person, an ordinary Canadian, he used to say, who wanted to see the world. He'd grown up in the Gas Bay looking at a rock, and he said, all I kept telling my parents was that as soon as I was old enough, I wanted to see what was up on the other side. And he got a job in the government after he had been in the Air Force, hence the Air Force blue linen. During the war, and they weren't luxury planes, and they really weren't luxury planes, and they, crossed in, under, over, around, and through enemy lines, and it was dangerous, and there were people who didn't come back, and he had these stories, and when he was done, he married the girl of his dreams and got a decent job in the government, working at things small and large, and worked his way up through the ranks, and gradually became somebody who was trusted by one of our very, very wise prime ministers. And he created, as part of a team, Jack created the guts, the mechanism, the process that would be the underpinnings, the foundation of our Canada Pension Plan. Essentially, how we all are able to live when we get. And he always said that when he retired, he wanted to take his bride and show her the world, and he did. And then she died, and he decided he wanted to see the rest of the world, the more dangerous parts of the world. And he went everywhere. He went all over the place because he could. Because he said, what am I saving my money for? What else am I doing? I'm doing what I've always dreamed of doing. I'm living. I'm seeing everything. So this is pretty cool. This is amazing. This isn't the book. Hang on. You're not going to believe it. Oh. This is the book. This photograph was taken by Jack. You can see the foot. He has walked away from the team. Where are they? They're about 50 feet from the North Pole. Jack Mackenzie, at the age of 77, skied to the North Pole. Now, the book is, I can't do this properly, I have to turn it on. The book is, where's this fabulous picture? Okay, this. Can you see this? Can you see this? This is what I grabbed to form the inside of the book. When you first open the book, this is what you see. You see his life in snapshots. Jack Mackenzie went everywhere he could. He wanted to see everything, and he did. When he was 85, he was on a Russian trawler in the Northwest Passage. 85. They had turned this ship into a vessel that took people on tours of the North. And so it was like a 30-day thing. I think it was 30 days. And you would get aboard, and there would be, I don't know, probably 20 of you, because the trawlers are also working. And they break ice, and they also, study what's going on up there, and, feed back data. And one of the things they used to get to do was get off the boats, get off the ship, and climb into Zodiacs, which are floating heavy sea boats, to sail out around the ice pack, the icebergs, and take pictures. And there'd been a storm, and the seas were still fairly choppy. And when Jack was climbing down the metal stairs on the outside of the ship and stepping into the Zodiac, a wave came along, and he slipped on the stair, and the Zodiac came up. And when Jack landed in the Zodiac, he snapped the tendon in one of his legs and was crippled. And they could have airlifted him, but really? So he stayed aboard, and by the time he got home, and could not do all the things that he used to do, and he felt terrible. He was inducted into the Explorers Club, and at the Explorers Club, he was presented with the Guinness World Record as the oldest person to ski to the North Pole. His sons, and his grandsons were in New York with him for the presentation. And it was a moment in his life. When I met him, he was 92, and he had thought that all of his journeys were over. And we decided to take one last one together. So we did. And I didn't think I was going to be this shook up. Isn't that funny? Anyway, sorry. So anyway, I would meet with Jack twice a week, and he would tell me stories, and I would write them down, and we would talk, and he would show me his travel journals, and he would show me his photograph albums and his souvenir collections. And as we did that, I pieced together his story. It took us 2 years. And then the day came, and I presented him with the whole thing. I think he had 30 of these made, and they're lovely. They're keepsakes, and they're not only keepsakes, they're wake-up calls. They're wake-up calls and calls to get up, get over it, seize the day, be, do. Not be more, not do more, not reinvent, just be. But be now. As opposed to, well, when I retire, and as soon as I get past this, because that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And I'll tell you something really funny. This morning, I get up and I do my exercises, and I have my coffee, and I plan my morning, and when it's video day, I plan what I'm going to talk about. I'd already decided yesterday that I was going to talk about wake-up calls because something popped up, and I thought, oh yeah, that was one of mine. Jack was one of mine. Maybe that's why I'm emotional, because wake-up calls are such a gift. They're so well, they come from just carpe diem. Yes, Charles. Seize it by the throat. They're so important when we're given a wake-up call. Garen will eventually be watching. So the wake-up call is our alarm going off. And it's right after the wake-up call that happens. The wake-up call triggers that. Triggers the aha. Triggers the, oh, look at the time. What was I thinking? That's what a wake-up call does. And Jack was slipping into, I'm an old man, I'm in a wheelchair, there's nothing much left for me when I met him. And I was his wake-up call. He realized that he had one last journey in him, and he took me with him. He took me on this amazing journey to all these countries and all his memories and all of the, and then there was the time that, and I don't really remember this, but, and I remember one day when I came, he was in a pretty giggly kind of funny mood, and he said that at breakfast, he and one of the other residents, who is also in a wheelchair, were racing each other up and down the hall, and they got yelled at. 93-year-old man got yelled at by some young whippersnapper who is, you're a menace. So when I reached there all that day, he was all kind of, I'm a menace. And I said, how fast can you go? And he said, well, not that fast because you know, the halls aren't long enough, but I corner well. 93. I want to be like that when I'm 103. Um, the thing about wake-up calls, the thing that is happening right now, we're getting them, and we're not noticing them because we're distracted. And the distraction is our own fault. And somehow, some way, we need to find something that, you know, we can hit ourselves over the head with to say, pay attention, face the front. What are you doing? Stop scrolling. Put that down and focus on the moment, in the moment. So the thing that happened yesterday was I got reminded of the time that my a cousin I didn't know I had, the phone rang. And I said, hello, and this voice said, is this Abby Haggard? Yes. He said, well, my name's Rick Haggard. I'm your cousin. And until that moment, I had had no idea that there were any other Haggards. I thought I was kind of, you know, my dad was an only child, and I'm an only child, and I don't have any kids, so. And it was my understanding that my grandfather was an only child. So the only people I'd be related to would be on my mom's side of the family. So I had no thought that there were any other Haggards. And I said, what? What are you talking about? He said, so here's the funny thing. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, which is on the other side of Toronto from where I am, for those of you who aren't sure. And his daughter was watching You Canada on television. And as the credits rolled, she happened to stay staring at the TV. And as the credits rolled, my name came up. And she said, Dad! So what? And she said, you got to come and see this. And so they looked me up. And sure enough, my grandfather was on a broken branch of the family. And my cousin had no idea he was even there. So it prompted new digging. And did I know this, and had I known that, and what about so-and-so? And at one point, he said, you know, you're the other famous Haggard. I said, how many are there? He said, well, there's a lot. There's a lot. Yorkshire is full of them. Yorkshire, England. We're everywhere. Really? Oh, yeah. And he said, we're all over the world. We're all over the world. But then he said, but until you, the most famous Haggard is a veterinarian, was a veterinarian. And he studied in Guelph at the veterinarian college and moved to Kentucky because he wanted to work in the field of equine medicine, horses, and Kentucky was the best place to do that. And he invented the table, the surgical table that is used to operate on horses, because you can't just say, lie back and think of England. And you have to be careful with horses because they can suffocate. So what they do with this table, now, I don't really, I didn't inherit any of his skill or wisdom with horses. In fact, the only horses I've ever met kicked me off. But apparently, my cousin created this table where you walk the horse into the room, the surgery room, and you place the horse, you led the horse right up to beside the table, and you strap the horse vertically. You strapped the horse while he was standing to the table. You administered the sedative, and as the horse lost consciousness, the table rotated. And you were able to operate on the horse without any great panic-driving inconvenience to the animal. Genius! There's more than one way to operate on a horse. And he became famous, and he traveled all over the world, and he was used to be called to oversee operations on the famous Lipizzan stallions, all over the world. And to this day, the Haggard stables, the Haggard school, the Haggard clinic in Kentucky is world famous. Who knew? I didn't know. Well, I know now, and so do you. And so my cousin and I, his first name is Rick. Rick and I had occasional conversations back and forth. And it fascinated me because I had no idea where our family had come from, who we were. I knew something about my mother's side of the family, but I knew nothing about my dad. And then I got a job writing a screenplay for someone who lived in Bergen, Norway. I had left show business briefly, and I got signed on with a writer's agency, and he picked my name out of a hat because it was Norwegian. He figured if anybody was going to understand a story about Vikings, it would be a Viking. And so I said, in fairness, we spoke, in fairness, I know nothing about Vikings. I'll need to do some research, and then I'll let you know if I feel I can do the job. So I started looking into Vikings, and I noticed something odd. And the odd thing was this. A well-known event at the time was the raids that were taking place in the 700s from Scandinavia to Scotland and Ireland and England and the northern coast of Europe on a regular basis. This is kind of what they did in the summer. Plant the crops and go raiding. And everybody did it. When the Scandinavians left, the people from Europe came, and so everybody raided everybody who wasn't home. And so it wasn't just the Vikings, it was everybody. This was kind of, instead of going to the cottage. So I'm reading all this and thinking it's interesting. But then I noticed that there was a major raid, a major exodus in the mid to late 700s from a particular part of Norway to England, to a particular place in England. Yeah, the place where my ancestors settled. And I said to myself, okay, so what are the odds that, there was a boat filled with happy, smiling, handsome farmers and their girlfriends and wives and children. And then just up the beach, there was a boat filled with lawless, marauding, wild-eyed, handsome, beautiful, scary, combative Vikings. What are the odds? 2 separate sets, same time. Sure, why not? I called my cousin. Hi, so I have a question. I told him, is it possible? He said, don't be ridiculous. You know what the Vikings did when they had to leave and they went someplace else? They stayed and they lived there and they did what the people do there. So I said, oh, okay. So that means I'm a Viking? He said, are you kidding? Have you not looked up anything that our family has done? And I said, well, yeah, I wasn't really putting 2 and 2 together. And he said, and you travel all the time? And your dad traveled? And you love the ocean? Yeah. 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 And are you combative? Maybe a little. And he said, well, then there you are. And I knew all that. It's stored away somewhere. Interesting trivia, book 2. But then I had this thing come up on social media, and I thought, oh yeah, and kind of an interesting coincidence that it was Father's Day weekend, and I always spend a moment, a kind of different moment in memories and conversations with my dad on Father's Day weekend. And I'm looking at this picture of him. The picture I always post is him. He's, good morning, Garen. I post this picture of my dad, and he's 1,100 feet tall and handsome, wearing a uniform, and I'm I'm tiny, but he's this tall, and I'm this tall, and I'm looking up at him, and he's looking down at me, and we're both smiling at each other, and we're smiling the same smile. Um, and what I love is the smile. I love that I'm smiling at him and he's smiling at me and we're smiling the same smile. We're grinning. It's a conspirator's smile. I'm not looking up at him adoringly. I'm looking up at a co-conspirator, and he's looking down in the same way. It's lovely. So when I thought about that, and I thought about the brave things that he did, not in serving in the war and not in changing the game in a dramatic way, but the brave things he did to overcome his challenges, his roadblocks, his hurdles. And I thought about the joy he brought and the frustration he brought and the strides he took and brought me with him every step of the way. And I thought, that's the wake-up call. That's the wake-up call for me this week, and it's the wake-up call for me for the video tomorrow, I said yesterday, that we get these wake-up calls all the time. We just don't see them, or we do, and then we forget them because we're busy, we're distracted. So not long ago, I was talking to someone who said, do you keep a journal? And I said, no, I'm writing all the time. You know what I do when I'm not writing? I don't write. And she said, yeah, but you should keep a journal. And I said, what am I supposed to put in it that I didn't put in all day? And she said, a summary. What I did on my summer vacation. Whatever happened. The highlights, the lowlights. Write it down. I said, why? And she said, well, because you know very well that when you write things down, they get stored in a different place. And I thought, oh, yeah. So I did. I started doing that. I'd never done it. And she has always done it. And I've always admired it, but I just never made it a priority. And now what I find is that when I don't reread the journal during the day. I read what I wrote yesterday when I'm getting ready to write what comes out today. And it's half a page. I don't go on and on, unlike this. and here's what I have noticed. I've noticed that we get little nudges all the time. And we either ignore them, or as I said, we see them, but we don't retain them because we're distracted. And they just kind of float to the back. The thing is, when I say we don't retain them, I don't mean that they bounce off us like we're Teflon. They stay for a second, and then we absorb them. And they go back into the memory bank. And then, as happened yesterday, out of nowhere, bonk, they resurface. The little guy who hands me out stuff in my head when I'm trying to think of something to say. The little guy says, here, try that. And a lot of the time it's really pretty good. Other times I'm thinking, what is wrong with you? I look like an idiot now. Little guy's in the back, sorry. So, the wake-up call business. As I pulled Jack's magnificent book from the cabinet where I keep it in safety, I sat down with my coffee and I scrolled through my various social media feeds. And there was a headline on Twitter. And I'm holding, picture this, it's, oh God, it weighs a ton. It's 450 pages. No, sorry, it's 520 pages. 450 pictures. It weighs a ton. It's 8.5 by 11. Hardcover. I'm holding this thing, looking at it, loving the photograph. There's a better shot of Jack's feet walking away from the group, and you can see in the top corner, that's him. That's him. As I'm holding the book, the Twitter headline is, fewer than 50% of Americans have read a book in the past 2 years. Fewer than 50% of Americans. That's still a lot of Americans. That's still a lot of people, but it's fewer than 50%. And it's an indication, they say, of a decline in the book industry. Well, there was a decline in the book industry when the internet came along, and you were able to print things on demand. And people who jumped on it, like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all these other publishers, Vanity Press, made it possible for people to publish books without having to pluck at the hem of these large traditional publishers who would look down from a great height and say, "We do not think you are worthy." Amazon said, "Write your book. We'll put it up there. People can buy it. They don't have to go to a publisher." And lo and behold, a lot of people began writing books. And you know what? Some of them are great. Some of them aren't. But, oh well. That happens in restaurants too. Some of the food is great. Others, not so much. Doesn't mean you don't go to restaurants. And because there are some not so great books self-published, it doesn't mean you stop reading. No, what's happening is people are not reading because it's taking too long, because a book is 520 pages long, and it's a commitment. And people hate commitment. People, you say the word commitment, and you can hear people going, "Yike!" and falling down, running into walls, screaming. What's that sound? Oh, it's somebody running from commitment. And or they can commit briefly. I can commit you in between 10 and 10:15. After that, I have to run, and I mean that literally, away. So a book is a commitment in the way that we used to think of books. Now there are audiobooks. Now there are ebooks. Now, if you put a camera on you, there are video books. So there's more than one way to enjoy the story that a stranger has chosen to share. And the way that I think it's going more and more is shorter books. Instead of one big long book that people mean to read, mean to get around to, cut the chapters and make them books and stack those little booklets together. Instead of writing one book that people only get partway through, it's a series. And people are saying, "Oh my God, have you read book 3? Well, okay, that's the other way of saying, "Are you on chapter 3 yet?" And so it doesn't mean that people are not reading. It means that they're reading differently. Wake up call. Technology has changed the way we tell and listen to stories. Well, of course it has. Technology is changing everything, right? Yeah, wake up call. How long have you had a computer? Yeah, wake up call. How long? How many years did it take you to realize that you can do more than look at pictures of a cat on a phone? Wake up call. The opportunity we have to, do you hear yourself? You listening to you? I hear me all the time. I'm just not always listening. That's the problem. We're not always listening. We're going, and we're not home. So the wake-up call, Terry Pratchett has books differently. Chapters? I'll have to look that up, Karen. So what I started to do a few years ago with people who didn't read themselves, they didn't read, but they had a story that was amazing. I said, well, how many pages would you read? If, let's say your best friend wrote a book, how many pages would you legitimately read because it's your best friend? I don't know, 20? Okay, then let's see if we can put your book in chunks of 20 pages. Let's do that. Because if that's what you'll read, then people like you, the 20 pagers, will read 20 pages. Awesome. Let's go find a publisher that'll allow us to do that. And I did. And I began with the idea that not only is it easier for people to commit to 20 pages, because by the way, you know those times when you go into that little room where there's all the porcelain? Yeah, you can read 20 pages in there. That's why people used to take the newspaper. Now they scroll on their phone. 20 pages goes by in a heartbeat, really. If it's not crammed tight with small print and narrow spaces. And if you put in a few pictures so that people can laugh at the pictures, point, and then scratch their heads at the words. If we make it bite-size for people who aren't that hungry, if we make the task doable in stages for people who aren't that invested, if we provide the option to stick a toe in the water without committing to swim the English Channel, more people will say, what the hell, I got a few minutes, let's give this a try. It doesn't mean that we're nudging people back into reading the way people used to read. We're inviting them to find a new way to hear someone's story, to sit down for a second, step out of our world and into theirs in a different way. The most interesting phenomenon about this TikTok business, the short video clip, is not that it's no commitment. It's not that it's, certainly not that it's well done. It's that it's variety. It's like, remember that commercial years ago for that box of snacks where you never knew what you were going to get inside? Have you, it's bits and bites, it's a different snack in every handful, whatever. That's not the slogan. They'd have fired me if I tried that slogan. But you know what I mean. You put your hand in, you get out different stuff. If variety is what people are looking for, because they can't commit, because their attention span is pretty much the same as a goldfish, then we make a decision. The wake-up call in this case is, do we want to teach them to read the way their grandparents did? Or do we want them to know our story? Do we want to connect? Do we want to engage with them and have them say, oh my God, that's funny, that reminds me of the time it takes me back to the day when we. That's what stories are really for. Stories are the connecting goo. We're all this huge machine with working parts that overlap and influence and nudge and shape. We need that goo. Life is a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. That's right. Garen, I use evidence books for work. However, I put my thoughts in there along with the facts, hourly. I have to write my own rules. Yeah. Actually, Garen, you know what's very interesting? That's a very, very interesting thing you said. Garen is talking about the fact that he has a logbook, and he has to report on a regular basis. He says, I have to write my own rules. We all do. Every minute, all the time. We don't follow the rules robotically. We shape them. We influence them. We nudge them to fit our moment all the time. Writing down how we do what we do adding our thoughts. It becomes a journal. It becomes a window into the world of the person writing. And when we, not that we want to be looking in other people's windows without their permission. The book, however, gives us permission to do that. Here, look in my window anytime you like. And how many windows are there? How many would you want? How many windows do you want to be able to look in? And I guess really part of this wake-up call is happening because of two things. As I'm writing the Pivotry series, I am not only remembering things that have happened to me, I am learning more about the things that are happening to you. I'm paying a different kind of attention to the world around me because I'm writing today, in this moment, in this time. And I can't ignore what's going on. It's shaping everything. And that's the other wake-up call. There's so many happening right now. The wake-up call is that we aren't the first, and we won't be the last people to have these moments of uncertainty, these moments of, oh my God, these moments of recognition. And the reason I know that is because of the work I've done to study how this whole thing, not my hair, that's something else that I haven't been able to figure out at all. What's going on inside our heads, what's going on in the ways that we sift and sort the information we get or we think we get, and how we apply the rules we learned or think we learned, and how we put all that together and bake our own cake, our own meal, our own set of tools, how we process and proceed and prioritize. Everything is triggered by something else. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about that today, aside from, by the way, today's video 59, Thursday's going to be the 60th video. 60! I've done 60 of these things. It's incredible. This is a wake-up call. I can do video. It doesn't look the same as when you have a professional camera person and equipment and lighting and whatnot. But then, on the other hand, I've watched a few TikToks, and apparently there are sliding scales of what am I looking at? And these are working. The reason I know they're working is that after I'm done, I watch back, and if I don't hate it, I don't delete it. And I haven't deleted any of them because I've watched and I've said, yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm walking here. It's all good. Some of it's a little shaky, but you know what? It's all good. And I'm working toward, carefully, step by step, I'm working toward, sorry, I just have to click, because these beautiful people are telling me these amazing things, and I'm not, it's not that I'm ignoring you, it's not that I'm not seeing it and responding. It's that I have to be in two places at once to do this. So this wake-up call that is striking me right now is the wave of thinking, the wave of behaving, the rise and flow, the ebb, the size of the wave and the size of the trough and the length of time things are taking. And I've noticed a couple of things that I think are fascinating that I'm putting in the Pivotry series. And one of them is these. One of them is this. One can't be these. One is, yeah. So one of them is this. I used to listen carefully to people I knew, whose work I knew, whose history I knew, and based on those things, who I respected. I would listen for their insights and ideas because I knew that they were relevant, that they were something I should think about, take into consideration, and evaluate while I was making my own decisions. I used to do that. I still do. However, through the internet, I'm also listening to people I don't know, I've never met, probably never will, whose credentials, whose experience, I can kind of double check, but I don't know directly that they've done the things they've said they've done, or know the things they say they know. I'm looking at the work of strangers. And I'm investing my time to read and listen to and watch the things they say and do. And even if I don't do it on purpose, those bits of information that come to me, if they trigger some kind of aha, my brains store it. That information gets put somewhere. Because that's how my brains work. That's how our brains work. If it resonates, we keep it. And that's happening more and more. It's happening more and more that we, all of us, are listening to, taking the time to be influenced by strangers, people we've never met and probably never will. People from all over the world, all different places, all shapes and sizes. We are tapping into the things they think and do. And that is changing the way we respond. We are no longer one tribe in one cave. We're no longer one family in a tribe, in a village, in a community, in an area, in a place. We belong to a global tribe. And within that global tribe, millions of mini tribes that pop up and flare and spin and disappear. Fame is fleeting? Yeah. Reality is fleeting. The sun is out. No, it's not. We think this. No, we don't. I'm an influencer. What'd you say your name was? Everything is different now thanks to the internet. That process, that phenomenon, the internet is called an agent of change. It is the trigger. The internet provoked a different way of doing things. Instead of yelling to be heard, when they invented the telephone, we were able to call, punch in a bunch of numbers, and yell to be heard. And when cameras came along, you could see us do it. Radio came along, you could sit and listen to it. Internet came along, and all the different platforms allow us to be heard in bigger and bigger and bigger ripples around the world. And that's a wake-up call. And people I know, you're saying, hello, Abby, where were you the last few years? That's not what I mean. What I mean is this. The internet has changed the way we expect to be served and serve. It has altered our understanding of how far we reach and how fast our influence gets there, and how fleeting that influence is. Henry Ford was an agent of change. It wasn't because he came up with the Ford car. There were other cars. There were prettier cars, more luxurious cars, more ridiculously elegant cars, long before Henry invented the Ford. That's not why he was an agent of change. He was an agent of change because he said, you know what? Car has no purpose whatsoever if people can't afford to buy them. And even if they can afford to buy them, it has no purpose whatsoever if there's nowhere they can drive them and no one to fix them. And because he saw that size of the picture instead of just the car, he reached out to the right people and said, you know what we need? More roads. You know what we need? Better wages. You know what we need? Places to fix these things and park them and fuel. And because he thought of that, everything we know about travel, everything we understand about how long it takes to get from A to B, changed. The freedom to go when and where we want on our terms changed. Before that, you had to get on a train. Oh, by the way, the train was an agent of change. And by the way, the steam engine and the printing press, all of these things were agents of change. The person who invented, discovered, said, I wonder what happens when we do this with that. Penicillin. Insulin. Glasses. Hearing aids. Agents of change. Why? Because it's not just that they invented something. It's that the fact that we use them and develop a need for them changed us. We are not the same. I wear glasses. I found a way to wear glasses that don't look like I'm staring through Coke bottle bottoms. Back in a distant past, I would have been the Viking who never made it to the ship because I kept walking into trees that I didn't see standing there. Where's Abby? Bonk. Oh, she's coming. She's in the woods. She'll be here in a minute. All of these things change us without our notice because, well, they take a while. They don't happen instantaneously. You don't go to bed blue and wake up green. That you'd notice. So the wake-up call that I'm thinking about, that I'm leaning into today, that I'm talking about in this long, rambly way, is us and how we choose to own our days. Every single day is a choice. Every day. You wake up and you choose to be grateful. You choose to say, Everything working? Awesome. Now what? We choose to think that way. We choose to look at the day ahead of us as full of possibilities or problems. We choose that. That's a wake-up call. There are so many things that are painful and exhausting and confusing and troubling. It's easy to get sucked into that frame of mind. And if that's where we live, if that's where our loved ones live, then people like us do things like that. The thing is, wake-up call, we don't have to. People who say to me, why are you always so damn cheerful? Frankly, Scarlett, they make my day. They make my day. I usually say, is it annoying you? And they say, yeah. My work here is done. I'm cheerful because I'm grateful. I'm grateful because I'm here. I'm grateful because I have the ability, I have been gifted with the ability to laugh and feel the sun and enjoy a meal I don't ruin. Sometimes when I make a meal and I invite people over and they say, did you cook this? And it's good. I know, right? It's my answer. Can you do it again? Who knows? Maybe. I don't wake up. I wasn't born under the heading of Miss Whimsy. I was born a Viking, and I didn't know it. And I walked around for a really good portion of my life, having no idea that not only was I part of a tribe, I was part of a tribe that is still changing lives. I have this book on marketing. It's called The Viking Manifesto. And the not liver and onions. I have never, Karen, I have never cooked liver and anything. Not once. Well, thank you, Charles. I'm glad to. I'm glad you're here too. The opportunity I have to not only tell my stories and go on and on ad nauseum, I can tell somebody else's stories for them, with their help. I can't figure out how to hold the book, but you know what? Fortunately, I'm good at those other two things. The opportunity that I have is the opportunity we have. And that is to find the way our story connects to your story. What works? What hinges together? What allows it to lean this way and lean that way? How do I take away the knowledge that benefits me? How do I take away the ingredients that make me smile? How do I do that? How are you making it possible for me to do that? This is technology. Is it on a printed page? Is it an audio file? Is it something you can pull up on a screen? Is it something that you want to come and see in person and watch as I read or interview? I created a concept, a production company concept called Story Me TV 2 years ago. 2 years ago? Yes. When COVID-19, the pandemic, got in the way. of all the things that we normally took for granted every day. We couldn't just randomly, on a moment's notice, go and do any number of things. We had to rethink. And one of the big things we had to rethink was how we connect, how we communicate, how we share, how we express ourselves, how we relate, how we entertain, how we educate. All of those things changed. And I said, you know what hasn't changed? Our need to hear the stories. Our love of connecting and sharing. Our desire, our drive to be part of a tribe. That hasn't changed. That won't go away. And all of this looked like a challenge for me. I didn't say, oh no, it's all over. I'm just going to go and sit at the bottom of the garden and talk to worms. I said, I don't think so. How am I going to fix this? How do we fix this? What's already out there that I can leverage to fix this? How many platforms? How many people in how many countries are finding their way through this? How can I tap into that? Nudge it this way and that. And make it a game that I can win. How can I do that? And I knew that the only way, the best way, the easiest way was by doing it with you. I'm not an island. No point in me writing a book and I'm the only one reads it. No point in me writing a story and telling it to nobody but the plants. A story has a teller and a listener. That's how it works. So the wake-up call was pivotry. The wake-up call of all these wake-up calls was a series of pivots. A series of, well, how long has that been there? Did you see that? Did you look over there? Do you see that? And we pivot and say, well, do tell. That's a pivot. And we pivot all the time, every day. 5 ways. Mentally, emotionally, physically, spatially, energetically. All the time. Every single message we get, every single thing we see or hear or feel, we filter it and we pivot. When we react, we say, wake-up call. Or we say, but we react. And when it's important, when it matters, we store it. We store it because we have brains that say, I may be able to use that someday. If I store it, I can restore it. If I've stored it, I can restore it. I can repurpose it. I can use it in a different way. A wake-up call? You're watching a video that I'm recording. I'm talking to you about the things that strike me, that make me say, then I'm figuring out how to turn it off. I'm sharing it. And some of it is resonating. Some of it is hitting you. When it resonates, that's energy. Right? When I go, and you go, that's energy. So when it resonates and your brain says, you store it. Now it's yours. It's in there. You'll pull it out someday. You'll be in a conversation with somebody, you'll open your mouth, and my words will come out, and you'll think, how the hell did she just do that? Magic. So pivotry is how we pivot. Pivotry is why we pivot. Pivotry is more than the actual turn. It is the style, the duration, the angle, the purpose, and who it serves. Isn't that interesting? That's a wake-up call. Chemists work in chemistry. Thinkers and planners and doers who pivot are masters of pivotry. Dentists who fix our teeth work in dentistry. Masons who work with stones, masonry. Someone who looks after trees, forestry. Wake-up call. It's exciting, isn't it? When we can see a thing, when we can understand a thing, when we can share a thing, when we can recognize the value of the thing in our daily lives, we're not chasing it. We're owning it. It becomes our tool. It becomes our infinite treasure chest of possibilities. A long time ago, oh my goodness, I've gone long. A long time ago, I did stand-up comedy. Now there was a pivot. It was a pivot. Let's work with people who want to throw stuff at you. And when I did stand-up comedy, I discovered that people are looking for the quick hit. A story has a beginning and a middle and an end. A setup, an evolution, and a follow-through. That's a story. Stand-up comedy is the setup and follow-through. There's no center. Da-da, foof. Da-da, foof. That's stand-up comedy. So I pivoted from the storytelling to, short jokes. Short jokes, but with no middle. With no long. It's an observation more. Stand-up comedy is more really observation, slices of life. Flash fiction. Jokes are stories with a quirky surprise. And when I did stand-up comedy, I talked about my life because it's the only thing I knew. And I said that when I was growing up, when I was a child, I always thought that there was a book that everyone got. Every single person on the planet got a book, a how-to for life. I didn't get one. That was okay. I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. I knew I didn't get one. And the reason I knew I didn't get one is because I had no idea what I was doing. There was no book that I could remember, and we had a lot of books. The reason I thought that everybody else got one was that from my perspective, it appeared that everybody else knew what they were doing. Well, I didn't know what I was doing, so I assumed that if they knew what they were doing, and they appeared to know what they were doing, it was because they had a book of instructions. I figured that we moved a lot, and probably my book was just kind of in the lost book section or the lost mail section at some post office somewhere along the way. And I never asked my parents about it because I assumed that if they wanted me to know where the book was, they would have told me. And there were times when I would look at my parents and think, no, they didn't get the book either. I'm not going to ask and embarrass them. And then one day, this funny thing happened. It was a wake-up call. And the wake-up call was this. There are times when people seem to go out of their way to be completely filthy to you. They cut you off in traffic, they steal your boyfriend, they gossip about you, they tell lies, they do all kinds of things for no particular reason that you can see. And it occurred to me finally, and I did this in stand-up comedy, and I said, I think I figured out why they do that. I think here's what happened. They didn't get a copy of the book either, but they think you did. Not only that, they think somehow you got your copy autographed and they can't stand it. And this odd thing happened. Everybody in the place applauded. They all laughed. They all applauded. Somebody whistled, cheered. And I thought, I've struck a nerve. And in that kind of moment, I realized that none of us got a book. No one has a blueprint. Everyone is guessing. What's 4 and 3? 11? Everyone is doing what they think they're supposed to do. Everyone is doing what they think they'll get away with. Everyone is just out there giving it a shot. If they don't try very hard, they weren't that invested. If they try too hard, they're really invested. They want control. They're terrified. There's something wrong. There is no book. We're all just here doing the best we can with what we have. How long do we get? No clue. Are there guarantees? No. You know what I love? Here's what I love that is crazy. I worked in sales briefly. I worked in sales my whole life. We all work in sales. But I worked in actual sales briefly. And somebody said, does this come with a lifetime guarantee? And I burst out laughing. And they said, why is that funny? And I said, well, in the first place, whose lifetime? Mine? Yours? And they just said, what? And I said, whose lifetime? Well, the lifetime of the thing. And I said, yeah, okay, but whose lifetime? Does the battery last forever? How long is a life? I heard of a guy who died when he was 35. I knew somebody who lived to 110. Which lifetime? And how do we know? You're not going to be here till you're 110. When you're 109 and the thing cacks on you, what are you going to say? I was robbed? Lifetime guaranteed. Okay. I like the one that says 30 days or 30 feet. No, 30 minutes or 30 feet. That's it. 30 minutes or 30 feet. The warranty is for 30 minutes or 30 feet. How far can you get the car in 30 minutes? That's pretty good. That's a really genuine guarantee. It's really honest. There are no guarantees beyond 30 minutes or 30 feet. Let's go with that. There are no certainties. There are no absolutes That's an absolute. Um, there are not as many absolutes as we think there are. We are here now. That we know. That we know. So if we're here now, then for now, we should be present. We should be invested. We should be engaged. We should find, stored back in there somewhere, underneath the exhaustion and the confusion and the pain, we should be able to find that little voice that used to say, I'm walking here. We should be able to find that little voice. And for this moment, in this moment, we should be able to give that little voice a hug and say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, we are. Is there stuff going on over there? Of course. Over there? Absolutely. Are we going to make ourselves crazy and spin around until we throw up, trying to follow all of it? Or are we going to be here in this moment and say, I got this. I'm walking here. Care to join me? That's a pivot. That's worth pivoting for. What do you say? Awesome. In Renos, I gave a tailgate warranty. So the question, Garen, was the tailgate that the warranty was good until you could no longer see my tailgate? Oh, goodness, I love my friends. You guys are amazing. Tailgate warranty. Oh, goodness. Never let people like Garen stand behind you. Too awesome, too wonderful, too amazing. Okay. Kids, this was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for coming and joining me. I'd like you to do me a favor. And you know what it is. I'd like you to like and share and tell people that this is kind of a cool thing to do. I'd like you to tell people there's a YouTube channel. I'd like you to say, and now that you know there is one, for heaven's sake, subscribe. Costs you nothing. And you're going to have a great time. I want you to do that for me. Promise you'll try to find the time to do that, to corral one person, and say, do this. So between now and Thursday, I'm working on stuff. There's stuff emerging in the Pivotry book. You know, books write themselves. Books take away your power to tell the story and tell it themselves. Thank you, Charles. My videos are amazing because my friends are amazing, because life is amazing. I am part of the story. If there was just my side of it, I'd fall over. The completeness is us. Thank you. So here we go. Between now and Thursday, I would like you to do all that stuff I said. And then I want you to remember that no matter what garbage is floating around your view, you are amazing. You have within you, I'm walking here. It's okay to be exhausted. It's okay to say, I'm going to take a me day. It's okay to breathe in and out and let the nonsense go. It's okay. The nonsense is not yours to own. Remember that. Pivot. Say, nope, that sucks. I'm going this way. You're allowed. You have permission. Not from me. From the universe. You have permission to be good to you. All the time. And you also, because you're pretty awesome, you have the power and the intention and the desire to show how much you care about the people you love. They need to hear it. They need to know it. They need to feel it. If you're not close to them, you can reach out virtually and give them a hug and tell them you love them. They deserve it. And so do you. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.